Hi, Lance here, and I get a lot of comments asking about my routine. What supplements do I take? What interventions do I do? Well, today, in response to your request, I'm going to spill the beans and reveal my personal longevity plan. You guys have always written in asking about my longevity routine, and lately, those comments have gotten more numerous. What do I do personally? What supplements or drugs or meds do I take? What strategies do I like? What interventions do I use? So today, I'm going to address those comments and answer your questions. Today, we're going to be talking about my personal longevity plan. We're going to be talking about what I eat and how. We'll take a look at what supplements I take. We'll be talking about what exercises I do and why. We'll dive into what strategies I use and which interventions I implement in my own personal quest to slow down the aging process, or maybe even reverse it. I'll even talk about some strategies that I'm not implementing right now, but that I'm really interested in and want to start in the future. And I'll start by talking about how I go about collecting the data that informs my longevity plan. But first, let me say right here, this is my plan. This is what I do. I'm not recommending this plan to anyone else, nor am I recommending any part of it, because everyone's different. Everyone reacts differently to different drugs, to different foods, to different lifestyles. They react differently to different exercises or to exercise in general. What I do won't necessarily work the same for you as it does for me. So you need to figure out what your own longevity plan will be. For you, you need to design your own longevity plan. Now, how to do that, how to design a longevity plan, is a topic for another day. And it's a topic that's fully addressed in my upcoming course. Now, if you'd like information about that course, just click on the button right up here. Today, we're talking about my personal longevity plan, the one that I use. And the reason that I'm sharing it, it's not because I'm recommending it, but because for those of you who are creating your own plan but don't know where to start, sharing this plan with you should give you guys a blueprint for designing your own plan. The details of your plan might be different from my plan, but the structure should be about the same. Okay, so we're in agreement that we're all different, right? But if I'm going to design my own personal plan, I need to know exactly how I'm different. It's not enough just to acknowledge that I'm different. I need to know how I'm different. What's the measure? How does the data say I'm different? And where did that data even come from? It comes from testing. I run all kinds of tests on myself and have been for years. I've been tracking the results of those tests for about 5 years now. I get extensive blood panels done. I've had my DNA tested several times. I've tested my microbiota, my gut. I've tested my epigenome. I test, I track, and I monitor. I monitor my blood pressure, my glucose levels, my resting heart rate, and even my heart rate variability. I even monitor my aortic pulse wave velocity to give me an idea of how much vascular stiffening is going on. I'm constantly testing and I'm monitoring as many functions as I can. And I'm tracking the results of all this testing and monitoring across time so I can spot trends. As a result, I know what's going on inside my own body at the cellular level, or at least I've got a pretty good idea. Not only at any given moment, but over the long haul. And it's this knowledge, this data, that informs the design of my own personal longevity plan. It's this data that lets me know what's working, maybe what's working but can still take some improvement, and what's not working at all and requires maybe rethinking my plan. And as a result of this constant stream of data, my longevity plan is constantly being changed, constantly being tweaked so that it performs better. So what I would recommend is that if you're putting together your own longevity plan, you start out by testing and monitoring as much as you can. Learn about your own body so that you'll be able to decide which strategies and interventions are best for you. So once I collected all this data, I needed to decide how I was going to organize the plan and what details I was going to put in it. So let's start at a really high level and then dive deeper into the details. My longevity plan is divided into two primary divisions, the fundamentals and the interventions. The fundamentals are strategies that are fundamental to longevity. Diet, supplements, exercise, sleep. The fundamentals are not things that will lead to a longer life so much as they'll definitely shorten your life if they're neglected. If you're trying to turn back your own clock, but you don't have the fundamentals worked out yet, you're never going to have that much success. The interventions, on the other hand, are strategies that science suggests can actually extend our lifespans. Possibly. Now, I want to state right here that all the interventions that I use are experimental. None of them have been definitively proven to extend the lifespan of any human being that I know of. A lot more work still needs to be done. And people who use these strategies are experimenting on their own bodies. And I'm one of those people. I'm a biohacker because I'm 72 years old. I don't have a lot of time to wait. So I look at the science and I pick and choose between interventions. First, is it even something that I can do? A lot of the research hasn't left the lab. If you're not a scientist working in a lab, you can't even do most interventions. But some interventions have moved into the realm of the doable, at least for most people. Of those, which are generally considered to be safe. Now, this isn't about whether or not it's effective. This is just about whether or not it's safe. Regardless of whether it's effective or not, will it harm me? Finally, once I know that it's safe, I can look at how effective that intervention might be. Now, there's a problem here. For a number of different strategies, there's just not a lot of data on humans. Most of the research has been done on lab animals and very little on humans. Why? Because we're experiencing the birth of a new field, the science of longevity. We're still at the beginning. Science starts with lab animals, and then if it proves to be both effective and safe in the lab animals, it moves on to humans. But look, humans live a long time. Once the research has moved on to humans, it's going to be another, I don't know, maybe 50 to 75 years before we start actually seeing humans that have lived longer. Science is slow, and it just hasn't moved that far along yet. So interventions are a calculated risk. And the interventions that I use are the ones that seem like a good bet to me. The risk that the intervention will harm me is low, and the potential that it will benefit me seems reasonably high. Now, something else that I need to address right here. My plan has evolved over the last 5 or 6 years. It's not the same as it was because I don't have the same issues that I had. I resolved a lot of those issues. And so today, my plan reflects the fact that I'm in a maintenance mode for a lot of it. I've got my fundamentals dialed in, and I'm tweaking my interventions. So this plan is for someone who's resolved most of their issues and are fine-tuning some of the more esoteric aspects of their plan. In other words, not a plan for beginners. Okay, so there are two primary divisions to my plan, the fundamentals and the interventions. Let's talk about the fundamentals. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the fundamentals because I've covered all of this before extensively. And because I feel like I've gotten most of my fundamentals dialed in. Now, there's a little more work to do, but mostly I like the way it's working. So let's start with diet. I've been working on my diet for a lot of years. I've eliminated refined sugar entirely from my diet. I don't even eat much fruit. I don't eat many starches like grains, potatoes, bread, stuff like that. I've mostly eliminated gluten. I get most of my carbs from veggies and leafy greens. I've also eliminated dairy for the most part. Now, I still do eat limited amounts of butter and cheese, but I've mostly eliminated milk and cream. I've also eliminated processed vegetable oils like corn oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, and sunflower oil. I eat olive oil, but I don't cook with it. For cooking, I use coconut oil, but only when the recipe calls for some type of fat. I don't fry with it. In fact, I do very little frying. And when I do, I use avocado oil. Now, I'm a carnivore, so I still eat animal products, but I've mostly eliminated red meat from my diet, and I focus more on poultry and fish. But it's antibiotic-free, grass-fed, free-range, or ocean-caught. I stay away from factory farm foods. Here's the thing. Everything I eat is organic or as close to the original source as I can get. I don't eat refined or processed foods. I don't eat foods with additives. I stick with whole foods. Everything I eat is prepared at home, and I don't eat pre-cooked, ready-to-eat foods, and I eat raw foods as much as I can. I'm trying to fuel my body with the highest quality nutrition I can get my hands on, and of course, afford. I purchase foods that still contain as much of their original nutrition as I can. And when I'm shopping for these foods, I tend to shop around the outside edges of the market, where the whole foods are sold, produce, the meat department, and in the organic food aisles. Now, when I prepare my foods, I'm careful about the utensils. I don't cook with non-stick because of the chemicals called endocrine disruptors that can leach into my food. And I don't store that food in plastic containers for the same reason. I store all my foods in either glass containers or occasionally metal, usually stainless steel. Now, let's talk about how I eat. I do both intermittent fasting, and then monthly, I do a 3-day extended fast. And a couple of times a year, I'll fast for a week. Calorie restriction, or CR, is one of the few methods that have been proven to extend lifespans. And fasting, whether intermittently or as an extended fast, mimics a lot of the aspects and the benefits of CR. It induces autophagy, which is a process of cellular renewal, where the cell breaks down damaged cellular components and recycles them. I also take a lot of supplements. Let's face it, with modern farming techniques, our food just isn't as basically nutritious as it once was. So I supplement to round out that nutrition. I take vitamins A, B complex, C, D, E, and K2. I take potassium, calcium, boron, manganese, magnesium, zinc, selenium, and iodine. I supplement with several molecules that are called adjuncts, molecules that are in addition to the regular vitamins and minerals. Things like CoQ10, PQQ, ALA, ceramides, and DHEA. I take hyaluronic acid. I take collagen. I also take TMG to offset the demethylation that occurs with the NMN that I take. I supplement the amount of protein that I take to stave off sarcopenia, or age-related muscle mass, and to help me recover from the workouts that I do. I also supplement with creatine. I take a fairly large amount of omega-3 fatty acids in addition to the fish that I eat. And finally, I supplement with psyllium fiber to feed my gut. Okay, let's talk about exercise. I do 3 basic forms of exercise. I do mobility drills because, let's face it, almost everyone loses mobility as they age. And loss of mobility is one of the most fundamental aspects of aging. It's what causes frailty, along with sarcopenia, in aging adults. Yet, it's one of the easiest aspects of aging to reverse. Next, I do strength training. This is to reduce not only sarcopenia, but also osteopenia, or age-related bone loss, another cause of frailty. I do body weights a few times a week, and then I lift heavy with heavy weights about once a week. And I do cardio, a lot of cardio. There are 2 types of cardio, and I do them both because they each have different benefits, benefits that you can't achieve any other way. I do HIIT, or high-intensity interval training. This is a series of short, intense bursts of activity followed by short periods of rest. HIIT helps me to maintain my weight, but because it induces EPOC, or excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, also known as the afterburner effect. This is what can cause you to continue to burn calories for up to 36 hours after you stop exercising. The other type of cardio that I do is steady state cardio. This is when you exercise at a steady, continuous rate for a long period of time. This is what builds up endurance and stamina. It can also reduce your resting heart rate. So, what does all this exercise look like? Well, first off, I take my dog for a walk every day. We walk for about 1 mile to 1.5 miles every day. I do a short session of HIIT 2 or 3 times a week. Now, HIIT can be anything, but for me, it's on a stationary bike. I do a 1-hour session of steady state cardio once a week, and it's also on a stationary bike. And finally, I do an exercise called nitric oxide dump 3 times a day. This is a short exercise that lasts about 5 minutes, and it's designed to increase the amount of nitric oxide that your body produces. 3 times a week, I start out with a half-hour session of mobility drills. followed by a 1-hour session at Orange Theory. Now, for those of you who don't know what Orange Theory is, it's a class where I run on a treadmill doing intervals for about 20 minutes. Then I do intervals on a rowing machine for about 20 minutes. And then I work out on the floor with body weights, dumbbells, and TRX straps for about 20 minutes. And those 3 1-hour workouts on Orange Theory are the hardest workouts I do all week. I also work out with heavy weights once, sometimes twice a week. Now, I'm lucky enough to have my own home gym with a stationary bike, dumbbells, some free weights, and a lever gym, which is a type of weight machine similar to a universal gym. And that's what my exercise routine looks like. Finally, let's talk about sleep. Now, I don't have any special routine or plan for sleeping, but I'm lucky. I sleep really, really well. Now, if I didn't, then there would definitely be a plan to improve my sleep habits. Getting enough restorative sleep is critically important if you want to stay healthy and extend your lifespan. All right, let's talk about interventions. These are the strategies that I employ that are beyond the simple fundamentals. And the first thing that I do is I try to eliminate senescent cells. These are those zombie cells that I was talking about in my last video. And I try to eliminate them by taking a senolytic. The senolytic that I'm currently using is fisetin. And I take about 1 gram of it for 3 days in a row, once a month. Then I do a couple of months on, and then I rest for a month before I do another couple of months. But that's all about to change. Next month, at the end of March, I'll be adding a round of dasatinib plus quercetin to the fisetin, and I'll be doing that for almost a week. Now, I've been tracking my level of senescent cells for a few months, and I'll be doing a video on those results pretty soon. One way to determine the load of senescent cells that you're carrying is to measure the levels of senescence-associated beta-galactosidase, an enzyme that's a biomarker for cellular senescence. When I got the results back from my first test, they were slightly elevated. So I've ordered another test, which I'll take around the beginning of April, after the treatment with all 3 senolytics in March. And I'll be reporting on any success that I had at removing senescent cells then. I did another test around the same time that showed that I had marginally low levels of NAD+. Now, since then, I've been trying a 3-pronged attack to improve my NAD+ levels. That includes removing senescent cells, taking apigenin to block the effects of CD38, which consumes huge amounts of NAD+, and taking about 1 gram a day of NMN, a precursor to NAD+. NAD+ is crucial to several different aspects of cellular function. It aids in the production of ATP, the universal energy source for all cellular activity. It also activates sirtuins and aids in the repair of DNA. So I'll be testing to determine if my efforts to restore levels of NAD+ have been successful, and I'll probably be reporting on those results in the same video. I'm also taking spermidine to aid in autophagy. However, I'm not currently taking either metformin or berberine. These are both calorie restriction mimetics, and I feel that between all the fasting and exercise that I do, I've handled the CR aspect of aging. But this could change in the future, and if I do start to take one of them, it would be berberine. Now, I'm not a big fan of metformin simply because of all the exercise I do and the fact that metformin tends to cancel out exercise. Now, I'm not currently taking rapamycin, but that's also about to change. I signed up for the PEARL trial, which is a study to determine the impact of rapamycin on the aging process. But since it's a blind study, there's no guarantee that I'll be getting rapamycin instead of the placebo. So I'm looking into getting another source of rapamycin. It's possible that in about another month and a half, I might be undergoing the most radical intervention that I've ever tried. I'm thinking about going down to Costa Rica and undergoing stem cell therapy, which is an aspect of longevity science called regenerative medicine. And I think that rapamycin is part of their protocol. Now, if I do this, you can be sure that I'll be reporting on this channel about every aspect of that trip and about any benefits that I experience from undergoing the stem cell therapy. Okay, let's talk about a few strategies that I'm not currently employing, but I'm definitely thinking about adding in the future. I'm thinking about adding urolithin A and clotho to my regimen. Now, both of these show a lot of potential benefits, and I'll be doing videos on both of these in the future. I'm also thinking about adding a regimen of GDF-11. Now, this is a really interesting protein, and I'm going to be doing a video on it shortly. I haven't really decided if I'm going to do this yet, but I'm really intrigued by this molecule. GDF-11 is a protein that we produce naturally in our own bodies, but it goes into decline as we age, like everything else. And supplementing with it can potentially have a lot of great benefits. And that's it. That's pretty much everything that I'm doing or thinking about doing. Now, I hope you can see how my plan is constantly undergoing change, how I'm always tweaking it. In a few months, I may have decided to go through with a stem cell therapy. I may have decided to start GDF-11 or urolithin A or rapamycin. In a few months, my longevity plan could look quite different from the way that it looks today. It's constantly evolving and being refined. Now, in this video, I've mentioned a lot of strategies, very briefly, like dieting or fasting or exercise, like eliminating senescent cells or boosting NAD+ levels. In the description below, I provided links to all the videos that I've done that go into all of these topics in way more detail. So if you're interested in them, you should watch those videos. If, on the other hand, you're putting together your own longevity plan and you'd like more info on the aging process, then check out this playlist on the 9 hallmarks of aging. That's it for me. I'm out of here. Catch you next time.